Hey there, my name is John Lim, and welcome to our Alumni Honoring Week interviews, where we sit down and chat with one of our 700 Net Canada alumni, share a few laughs, and hear their story. Today, I have with me Jean Charbonnet. Jean, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Jean, all right, tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of a before, during, and after Net overview of your life. We just want to get to know who you are.
Sure. Well, before Net, let's see. I was 23 when I joined Net in 1994. I had just graduated from Franciscan University. I'm originally from New Orleans, which is where I'm living again now. I've moved back here. And grown up Catholic, nominal Catholic most of my life, but really had a big conversion. A big turning point was in, 1987. When I went to Medjugorje for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Medjugorje had a really big impact on my faith. I kind of went there really naive, more just interested in going on a free trip to Europe, because that was, when I'm 16, that was the only thing that appealed to me about it. I was like, oh, whatever. But so I went with my family and there saw all just the amazing things that happened there, all got to meet some of the visionaries and got to go to confession for the first time, probably since my first confession when I was 7. So it was like a 9-year-old confession. It was huge, very impactful. Just Holy Spirit just whomped me there in Medjugorje, and nothing was ever the same quite from that point. Then you kind of go back after that, and then you return back to the United States, back to normal life. And things got more challenging, but I never could forget those experiences that I had there. We went back again in 1990 when I was in college, and that was the final blow, the final straw. I knew I had to change permanently, and I could not go back to how I had been living. So that began a process of, I was at school, and I was like, well, I want to do more with my faith. How do I do this? How can I live this? Where I was at the school I wasn't really encouraging my faith. There was no one around me. I'd go to a daily mass. It'd be me and 5 old ladies from the neighborhood. And I was like, I've got to find fellowship. I've got to find a place. Yeah. Ended up finding a summer camp that a lot of Catholics went to, which then led me to Steubenville. And when I finally transferred to Steubenville is where I met my first Net people. And it was a mixed bag. I'll say that. Some people were impressive and some people frightening to me for where I was personally. And more than anything, as I look back now, I think more than anything, they probably challenged me in who I was. Could you be as bold as we are? Could you take time off and go do something like this for a year? Something selfless. And honestly, my answer was no, which is why I think I rejected those people. But it was when I finally met some people in my senior year who had been Net alumni, who I was great friends with, but I just never knew they had been on Net. And when I was finally found out they were, it surprised me in a good way. I was like, wow, okay, so someone like you did this, not just these wildly flamboyant extrovert people. And when I saw that, that really struck a chord with me. And I knew at that point that was something I had to do. So I did my interview there at Steubenville's campus and met a lot of people who ended up being on the road that year and knew when I met them, I was like, I hope I get to be on team with people like that. So showing up at training in the fall, it was actually Net USA's training because Net Canada didn't really exist. We got the training and they announced, oh, by the way, this year we have recruited, they used to only have 8 teams worth of people. We recruited a 9th team because this year, one team is going to go to Canada exclusively for the whole year. And honestly, I looked and I said, and I am not going to be on that team because I'm from Louisiana. Yeah. And I figured I'm already far enough north. I don't need to go any further. And I also figured, well, I'm already stepping out enough to do this Net thing. I can't step out any further than that.
Yeah, go to a whole different country.
Two things I knew I didn't want to do is that one, I did not want to go to Canada. And then they talked about people who are team leaders. And I said, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't want that either. No thanks. So I was like, okay, Lord, I'm not going to be a team leader and I'm not going to go to Canada. All right. So let's just give me a nice, simple job. I had been a theater major for a while. I ended up being a minor. But I was like, oh, I'll be the drama guy. That'll be fun. I'll be the drama guy and I'll just have someone else be the leader and I'll just enjoy the year. Well, again, it became pretty clear during some of the prayer times there. They were like, if not experiencing the Holy Spirit, you're not experiencing peace, you could be telling God no to something. You might be blocking the Holy Spirit by saying no to God. And I was like, I know exactly what I'm saying no to. And so I said, all right, Lord, I'll challenge you. I'll put it out there. I say, I'll go to Canada if you want, and I'll be a team leader if you want. And no sooner did I say that, I rested in the Spirit during adoration time, and I fell over. Now, of course, this is net training, so everyone's just like, oh, he's resting in the Spirit. No one thought I hurt myself or anything. So then when I came to, I was just overwhelmed with peace. And I was like, well, I think this is what's going to happen. And I didn't talk to anyone about that. I didn't say it to my small group or anything. I didn't want to be all like, I'm pretty sure God's telling me to be a team leader and I'm going to Canada. But I did get a sense from God that's what he wanted. And no sooner did I do it, the next morning, someone came to me and said, we want you to consider being a team leader. And then James came and talked to me and said, hey, we want you to think about Canada. Would you do it? And of course, I had to say yes to both things because I challenged God. I was like, if you want me to do it. And so I did. And I said yes to those things. It was very humbling, very frightening at the same time. And I kind of knew, well, the way these things are lining up, God must have something really big in store. Mm-hmm. And then I got to meet my team. And on my team, I was really blessed because Garth was in my training small group. And then we got to be on team together. And we did a couple of skits together during training, some fun stuff too. So we already had a great rapport. So I was excited about that. And then the rest of my teammates, I'd probably seen 3 of them, and the other maybe 6 or 7, I was like,
who are you?
Okay. I guess we'll get to know each other. But what's great is we just recently had a Zoom meeting with the whole original, Net Canada team.
Oh yeah, Garth was telling me.
We just had a meeting. And we talked about that day. We talked about team announcement night and our first prayer together and what that was like. And honestly, I can think back to, I can see the pictures to what it might have felt like, but I cannot remember not knowing those people. And when we started our meeting, my wife kind of came in the room, and she had been on Net as well. She was like, you guys talked like you just were off the road a week ago. And it was just really amazing. It was such a great meeting, and it brought me back to all those Net training experiences. But so my Net year was amazing, full of challenges, full of a lot of ways of being stretched. I changed a lot, over the course of my year. But we had such a good time together with our team, and all the retreats, yeah, it's very humbling to think about that, to put that in perspective, how many people God entrusted us with. And despite our flaws, because sometimes those are so apparent, you're like, I can't believe, 1, I get to be on this team, and 2, that these people are letting their youth, be with us for the day. So very humbling.
Yeah. All right. So you did your 1 year of Net, and then afterwards, what happened? What did you end up doing?
So after the road, came home, and it's like July now. And I'm like, oh gosh, I've graduated. I've done this year of missionary work. What am I going to do now? And I felt God tell me, I want you to be a teacher. And I remember saying, I don't want to do that. Once again, here we are again. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a teacher. But he made it really clear. He's like, do you see how I'm working with you and what you've been doing so far? Just trust me. And I think the way God's worked with me the best is he kind of blocks off all my other avenues so that I really just have one way to go. And he did it again. So I was a while out of job. And so finally, the school that my brother was teaching at, Archbishop Rummel High School in New Orleans, called him and said, your brother's just off the road with net. Is he looking for something? He said, yes. So a week before school opened, I got hired to teach religions, but even a net team came to my school, a net USA team. Towards the end of the year, it was still a net team. And that kind of put the fire in me again to want to be a part of net community. And it was right before I signed my contract to teach at school that I got a call from Mark Burcham. And Mark Burcham called me and said, I was talking with James, and he said last year that you had said interested in being a supervisor. And I said, yeah, I think I would. And he's like, well, pray about it for 10 days and then get back to me. I think I prayed about it for 5, and then I called him back. I said, yeah, I want to go. So I finished up teaching, took the summer, and then I joined Net USA staff in the fall of '96. So I was going to be a team supervisor. Well, back then called field supervisors, but I was a field supervisor for a couple of teams for 3 years at Net USA. So from '96 to '99. I was supervisor, and then I was also drama coordinator for Net USA. So I got to do that for a couple of years. And that's where I met my wife, Janice. My beautiful wife, Janice, was on the road in 1996, 97. I actually picked her up from the airport. So I remember picking her up from the airport, and I parked the van for opening day. I went straight into my office, and I grabbed another soup, and I was like, look, that girl, Janice White, make sure you keep me away from her.
So it was like love at first sight for you. You're like, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. She was not smitten. I was smitten.
It always works out that way, that one person likes the other person more.
Yeah, one person likes the other most. I was bitten. So, I was good. And, stayed, obviously, I didn't get to be her soup. I got a chance to be her soup, and I was like, nope, I don't want to supervise that team. So I was like,
very wise.
Yep. But she ended up staying at my house. I heard one of her dioceses was New Orleans Diocese, and she ended up staying at my house with my mom. So my family got to know her before she, we even ever dated. It was great. And so then she joined staff in '97, and then we dated, we got engaged, and then in 1999 we were getting married, and I knew my time was up supervising in Net USA, and that's when James called, and I think I had called Garth back in the spring or something like that, saying, hey, let me know if you ever have any openings. I'm looking for options for what to do after my Net USA time. And they called me back in like May and said, hey, would you like to come up here? And they said, pray about it. I think I prayed about it for 5 hours, not 5 days this time. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this.
Yeah, you knew.
Yeah, so I knew it. And so we got married that summer, and then we moved our stuff up first. And then she flew out to New Brunswick.
Wow.
And so, I'm in an apartment by myself for like a week while she was out there getting ready for the wedding. Garth and Rebecca helped me get moved in. We were in the Emerald Towers over by St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Apartment
you know
complex.
what's funny? I actually live in Little Italy in Ottawa.
Oh,
I live right on Preston Street.
Yes, Preston Street was one of my favorite parts. I love being so close to there. Yep. So I lived there, and so I got to supervise. Now I was supervising just one team. Mm-hmm. Garth and Laura supervised the other, and Lynn and I supervised together. Now we had been co-leaders on the road. This is funny. Lynn Nolan. We were co-leaders on Net Canada. Mm-hmm. Then I was her team supervisor when she was on. She came back to serve in Net USA, and then we were co-leaders, co-supervisors. Then now in 1999. So we got to soup, and then I was also recruiter. So now I was team soup, and I was recruiter for 3 years. And so I souped and I recruited for a couple of years. I had my first kid, and at that point, then my wife was like, these soup visits, it's hard having you away so much. And I said, well, I don't feel like I'm called to lead Net, so what else can I do? And so we created the development officer position, and I said, I'll take that. So I left souping and recruiting, and I became development. And I was kind of development James's extra guy. So I would come in, and James and I would meet with the bishop, and we'd do different stuff, but a lot of fundraising. And it was not my strongest suit. I'll say that. I was much more suited towards the teams, but I do know God called me to it, so I did the best I could. And what I feel like is that, now James would tell me otherwise, but I was like, well, I think in spite of myself, we raised money enough to cover the budget every year that I was in charge of development. So, but what I really enjoyed about development was calling the new recruits to give them the fundraising package and get them started. That was probably my favorite thing to do, because you get to talk to people who are newly recruited and they've just said yes. They're so excited and they're like primed. They're like, what can I do? What can I do? And so I would talk with them for like an hour and call them back and check in with them. And some people, were just great. And I got to know most of them, except for the recruiter. I got to know most of them before they even got to training. Mm-hmm. So that was great.
Yeah. So you did your years at Net Canada, and then what kind of happened there? So then
there's 3 more years as development officer, and then we were looking to hire a full-time, more experienced development officer. So then I moved into program director. I was we called it team coordinator first, because I was in charge of the teams and training. Eventually, we just called it a program director. And mm-hmm. I did that for my last 3 years, from 2005 to 2008. So got to do that. And all this time, I'm still doing drama. So I didn't get to let go of drama. I loved drama the whole time. So
that's great.
Got to do that. Program director is probably my favorite job I've ever had, ever. Not even the job I have now. I don't like it as much as I like being program director.
I won't tell your employer.
No. He wouldn't be surprised either. But no, I loved being program director. I loved working with the soups. We made kind of like a soup team, and we'd have these soup team days, and we had such a good time. Great fellowship and great time with them. Got to meet with them all the time. Also got to meet with Corey Jolly. He was my recruiter back then. So Corey and I shared an office. We shared an office for a while, and then eventually he needed to have an office by himself, because he told me, literally in his words, Jean, I get more work done when you're not here. So I was like, okay, fair enough. So, and then I also got to work with Christine. She was Christine Corneluk back then. She was a scheduler. And then all the soups. So we had a great time. I just loved all the people back then, and I really missed them. They were just a fantastic staff to be a part of. But then in 2007, we started to discern it was time to leave. I felt God calling me to leave, and not so much about leaving Net, but really kind of, as I see it now, I need to make the way for someone else and for more staff, for other people to be a part of this. I almost felt like the 9 years, 12, if you include Net USA, had been enough for me, and someone else was not being afforded the opportunity to be a part of staff if I was still there. So God called me away. Took a long time, took 6 months to discern it, but literally we did. And decided it was time to go. And so then we moved down here. So I get down here, and now the big deal is, this is the big question. What is after Net, right? What life after Net? How is that going to happen? What does that look like? Well, I came down here, and, I've been living so much in a kind of a year-to-year, week-to-week, month-to-month kind of lifestyle that the rest of this world does not really seem to neither appreciate nor understand. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, how am I going to make this work? And God was like, we're going to do it the exact same way we've been doing it the past 12 years. We're going to go week to week, month to month, year to year. I said, just listen for me and I'll tell you what to do. And I would pray, and I'm talking to priests, and they say, like, well, how had God worked with you in the past? Well, everything I just told you about, like switching schools and then finding Net and then deciding to go to Canada and leaving US, going to the US and leaving US to Canada, all those were this exact same process that I used to move on. And coming down here, I said, okay, Lord, just tell me who to talk to. So I ended up running into, and I had kind of been in contact with a guy who, when I was in my in-between year, between my road year and working for Net USA, when I was a teacher, I was also a youth minister at a parish nearby. And one of the guys who was a senior, I really kind of talked to a lot and mentored. He contacted me and said, I heard you're moving back. Let me know if you need something to help you get on your feet. And so I talked to him, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm coming back this summer. He said, well, once you arrive, let me know. So I got back and I called him up. I said, I'm here. What do you got? He's like, I don't have anything right now, but let's go through the interview anyway. And I said, wait. What is that? What is the job? Like, what do you have? He says, oh, it's being a neurotechnician. I said, what is a neurotechnician? I've never even heard of that job. He said, well, what you do is you go into surgery with these spine surgeons, and then you put electrodes on a patient, and you run diagnostic tests on the patient throughout surgery to make sure they don't get spinal cord damage or nerve damage during surgery. And I said, what makes you think I am qualified to do any of that? Like, why would you want me to? Like, because he says in the company, because he was the vice president of his company, he's like, in my company, I want high character, high quality people. And we've fired enough people that did not fit that description. He says, I can train anyone to do what this job is. What I can't train is character, and I can't train your faith. I can't train your experience that you've had in doing ministry. I was like, aha, this is how NET applies in the real world. And being someone of integrity, being a man of integrity, being a man of faith, being someone who knows how to work in a team, understands team concepts, understands flexibility, understands what it means to show respect to authority. All the different things that you practice on your NET year and in your NET team are completely applicable in the real world. Makes you a good employee. And I found that out. So they hired me, and I was like, well, Joseph, I don't know how well I'm going to do at this job. I mean, I've got 12 years of youth ministry or anything like that. He's like, don't worry about that. I'll teach you that stuff. And so I just went to chapel every day because I had no job. I was like, well, might as well just spend my time here. And God was just trust me and just take it one step at a time. So they said, stick with it for a month. If you don't like it after a month, leave feelings. I said, okay. After a month, they said, well, complete the 3-month training and you'll be on your own doing simple surgeries. And then if you don't like it at that point, you can quit. So I finished my 3-month training. And then they were like, well, you're already trained. You might as well just keep doing it. Are you liking it? I was like, I really literally have nothing else. And if anything, I know flexibility. So sure, I'll just keep this. And they said, well, 6 months, you can sit for your certification test. And I said, okay, Lord, this is the benchmark. I have no chance of passing that certification test. If you can help me pass that certification, I will stick with this job. To pass the test, I needed a 185 out of 250. When my test results came in, I had a 185 out of 250. And I thought that was a sign. That was a sign from God. I was like, D+, I passed.
Just got it.
Yeah, I felt like Tommy Boy. I passed. So I was certified. So I was like, okay, that's it. This is what I am going to do. And it's been 11 years and 3 companies now. I've moved to several different companies, still doing the same thing, working with the same surgeons with every company. And I'm still here and I'm still doing the same thing. And people ask me, well, how did youth ministry prepare you for a life as a neurotechnician? And I say, well, it trained me how to be a good employee. It trained me how to be a good teammate. It trained me how to be flexible and adaptable. And really, those are skills that can apply to any job, not just being a neurotechnician. And I said, and really, it's just the grace of God. And the grace of God and his opportunity, what he wanted me to do. And as long as I was obedient and listening, I knew I would do fine.
You went from being with NET for a very long time and then to a neurotechnician for ever since then. How do you feel like you're able to live your faith out in your everyday life and at your job or anything like that?
Well, I'll tell you that's interesting because there's 2 different ways I look at it. And there's how I'm living out my faith in my job space and how I'm living out my faith, like in my parish community, in my family, and and around my neighborhood. My job environment is not the most Christian based. Let's just say there's a lot of language and a lot of inappropriate humor, a lot of blue humor, and that kind of stuff in the operating room, and just in that culture and just in that subculture. And for a place that delivers babies, is not very pro-life. Let's just say that. Okay. And there's a lot of great people I get to work with. They're very salt of the earth type of people, but either uncatechized and evangelized in what. And so what I've always done is and then of course my role in the operating room is honestly to be in the corner and to just speak up when something happens. I'm not supposed to be distracting other personnel in the room or the surgeon or anybody else. I can train someone who's with me, and I can talk when something comes up or if they ask me things. So it's not really a position to directly evangelize in the room, but they know I have 5 kids, homeschool. They know I'm Catholic. So routinely things will come up where someone makes a joke about a church or about a priest, and the whole room turns and looks at me, and I go, I'll defend my position. I'll defend where I'm from. Look, homeschooling does not mean they're social outcasts, or no, not every priest is a pedophile, like all these kind of things that routinely get shot at me, as I represent the church. I might as well have a collar on underneath my scrubs in the operating room sometimes. But conversely, what does happen when I stand up for myself, they don't necessarily all start following me like a Pied Piper to church, but what ends up happening is during things like Lent, people will talk to me about, hey, this is what I gave up for Lent. They'll kind of try to talk to me about it until someone else comes in the room, and then they get quiet. Or with the pandemic, family. And so everyone's all like, oh, what's it like homeschooling? Like, you have all this wisdom now. You've been doing it for how long? It's, well, I've been doing it for 10 years. So, there's different ways that we bring it up, and we talk about, I'll bring up, faith here and there, ask people to bring it up. One of the biggest things I got to do with some of my colleagues was when my men's group was doing Exodus 90, people saw I was losing weight. They saw my face was getting smaller, and they're like, what's happening? So I started to explain what I did and what it was about, and little opportunities here and there where I get to put it in there. Or when Francis became the Pope, there was all this kerfuffle about that. Everyone looked at me, hey, Catholic guy, what's going on with all that? What's that all about? So I get my opportunities there. At my church and with my faith community, it took a while, but I've been able to find fellowship. And what I started to realize was, a bunch of net alumni aren't just going to show up at my parish and decide to buy a house near mine and go to my church so that we can all hang out and have a men's group. I realized I was going to have to create the fellowship. If I want it, I'm going to have to, we're going to have to create it. So we started doing some different series on prayer at our parish. My wife and I, we did this thing called the couple prayer series, taught couples how to pray together. And from there, I met some guys. There's about 3 guys that stuck around every time after all the sessions. We all decided, hey, let's form a men's group. So 3 years ago, we formed a men's group. And then from there, we've done things like Nineveh 90 and Exodus 90 and all these different types of things. I've done a lot of things that I learned from NET, like within your NET small groups, you do a timeline. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do timeline with these guys. They loved it. They ate it up. We did timelines, and then they feel like, oh man, I feel like I know you guys more than I know even my own brother. I'm like, it's because you just took the chance to share,
Yeah.
So we did timelines together. We recently had a really big men's conference here in the Archdiocese, what it's like to be part of a men's group. And, all these different types of things come up for men's ministry have really been coming up a lot lately. And my prayer always is, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just put it before me and I'll do it. I'm not going to go seek it, but I'll do what you give me. And that way I keep that balance between, not being too busy for my family and, not letting work, totally submarine me. That God helps me keep that balance in that way. My wife, Janice, she works with a charismatic organization here in New Orleans called CCRNO. She's involved with the women's group there. We keep things, try to keep things going, keep our kids exposed to those things, because one of the things I really miss about not being part of NET staff is my kids not, being at NET training anymore and being influenced by netters. I always really envisioned that for my kids as they became teenagers, they would be able to be around netters and, eventually want to do that. Crossing my fingers, putting that in God's hands. I'd love to see all my kids do it, but at the same time, I don't want them to do it because I want them to. I want them to want that on their own. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Jean, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your amazing stories. Now, before we sign off, I have one last question for you. For our audience out there, our missionaries get a modest monthly stipend to spend on whatever they want, since their food and housing are all taken care of during their mission year. I want to know, what is the most ridiculous thing that you ever spent with your stipend?
Apart from buying like a pint of Janice somewhere on the road when I could have my one drink, I think the dumbest thing I ever spent money on was this may not be too exciting, but it was a too expensive pair of jeans that I bought because I was sure that the ones that I had were not good enough, and I didn't know, I didn't have opportunities. I bought this like $60 pair of jeans I just totally destroyed my stipend, and it was like in February, and I was so mad at myself for doing it. I think I'd gotten the jeans and a haircut like in the same day on my team leader day off, and it was just gone. It was destroyed all at once.
It's very practical, though.
It was practical, but when I look back, I was like, I could have gotten cheaper jeans and gotten more Tim Hortons or something, like something more fun. You know?
That's fair. All right. That's all the time that we have for today. Again, Jean, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your year of service with NET, for all of the years of service on staff as well. For our audience out there, I'm John Lin. This is Jean Charbonnet, and we'll see you next time.